today, our topic is the state of sustainability for international associations. We're very excited to have three very important guests to join us on this conversation with two international associations and also one leading destinations who are very passionate about this topic. Before we start, I would like to briefly introducing the speaker. First of all, I would like to introduce Marc. Marc is with the IUCN, stand for International Union for Conservation of Nature. I would also like to invite Erika, which is the Director of Global Events with International Society for Stem Cell Research. And last but not least, we'd like to introduce Virginie, which is the Executive Director for the Destination Canada Business Events Unions. And then also, I think, one of the biggest champion on sustainability and impact in our industry. Today's conversation is basically going to be around this research that we did last year. It's a collaboration between ICCA and Destination Canada. The survey is between May and August, and we have a total about 249 response, with most of them are association and nonprofit organization. We would like to jump right into some of the finding of the report and bring that to Virginie, Marc, and Erika for their comments, because obviously the survey is one thing, the reality from association on the ground is another. So the first things we'd like to share is really the biggest finding from the report is the aspiration and implementation. As you can see that 66% of the survey showed that sustainability is very important or extremely important for the organizations. But if we break it down into what are the actual things they do, only 20% including sustainability criteria in their RFP, and only 12% including that in their annual report. There's clearly a gap between we really want this is very important to this is what we actually do. So I think to kick it off, maybe we can starting with Virginie, share a little bit about the background and then the rationale about this collaboration with Destination Canada, because this is also not the first report, right? We have done one in 2023, and this is a continuing report. What is this is so important for you or for Destination Canada?
Thanks, Sean, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This report is extremely important for those of you that know Destination Canada and how we work around sustainability. It's really part of who we are. It's part of our DNA, and it's extremely important. And not just sustainability from its environmental side, but looking at all facets of sustainability, including the socioeconomic and cultural aspect of it. And we have a national business event sustainability plan that supports our partners across the country, and we've done a number of initiatives from that end. On the corporate side, we also have a climate action plan, and we have a lot of initiatives going on. But what this particular report came from is we wanted to understand where our clients were, where were associations sitting in regards to sustainability. If we are working with them and hosting them in Canada, we want to know, is this important to them? Is it not? What can we do to help? So we partnered with ICCA to really understand and dig a little deeper to understand the minds and the aspirations of associations. And this is where this report came from. So yes, Sean, we had the first report that came out in 2023. And then in 2025, we did it again because things change and things evolve. And it's super interesting to dive into it. I encourage you all, even if you're just looking at the images in the report, that's okay too. But have a look and see if it resonates with you, if you're an association or as a destination, how it reflects what you can do.
Maybe we can start with Marc, and then we would like to get Erika's opinion on it as well. Can you share us a quick snapshot of where sustainability sits with your organization today?
Thanks, and hello to everybody. IUCN is International Union for Conservation of Nature. As the name indicates, sustainability is part of our DNA. Typically, we're part of the 20% who have sustainability in our RFP criteria. But so, to your question, Sean, where does it sit in the organization? We're a conservation organization, but at the same time, I would say we're not particularly advanced in terms of sustainability in our operations as an organization. One of the reasons we wanted to do this in our convening space is precisely to be a trendsetter within the organization and lead the entire organization, which is about 1,100 people. So it's a pretty big organization, to be the trendsetters within the organization and raise the flag of sustainability. So we did that for our event. but we also brought some tools and some approaches and a policy to the entire organization. So hopefully now, I would say it's not yet embedded, but it sits higher in the sort of visibility in the overall organization.
Thank you, Marc. And how about you, Erika, from your organization perspective?
For us, we're not putting it into the RFPs. We're starting small, and probably I most likely represent a good number of planners out there who are either wondering, how am I going to implement it, where I can implement it. And so right now it is something that I'm striving to get us to in baby steps, right? As some of the concerns comes in with cost. But there's some things that don't have anything to do with cost. The social part, what people don't know is that sustainability also includes social aspect of it all, where you can have more of a diverse group of speakers, make sure you're more inclusive. Those are little things that you can do that doesn't have to have a huge cost associated with it. But in regards to carbon footprint, that's something that we're right now lacking and trying to strive toward.
And I think this is something I would like to bring in Virginie, because I think on the Destination Canada's website, you had a section which is actually tie the UN SDG goals in different categories and how that translates into events. I feel like this is very fitting with what Erika just talking about, is you're looking at sustainability in various different ways, but at the same time, the question would be, what type of support you feel from destination or venue partner perspective they can support, or sometimes even open eyes for some of the association in terms for this?
I think this is where research like this really provides insights, because Marc said he's one of the 20% that includes sustainability into their RFPs. And that's great, because as a destination, when you get exactly what the client wants, then you try to meet that. But the biggest opportunity lies in those other 80%. And that's the Erikas of the world, right? That 80% is really where, as a destination, we can fill that gap. So a lot of the work from the sustainability side is provided by the venues, by the hotels, by the convention centers, by the destinations, and trying to guess what an organization might want, what might be helpful, and really provide those suggestions on how to provide a more sustainable events. And what you're referring to, Sean, is, I believe, our sustainability storybook. So we actually broke down sustainability, of course, always through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals lens, but through the 3 different pillars, like Erika mentioned, and give tangible examples of what has been done across the country to help planners. And someone could look at those initiatives and those stories and be like, oh, I love this one. Maybe I'll adopt that for my event. And it doesn't have to be in Canada. It can be anywhere else. It's just an inspiration for how to start, maybe small, when you don't know where to start.
I have to agree with that. I attended ICCA's sustainability workshop last year, and I think that was the big eye opener for me, is that you don't have to do everything all at once. You can start small and gradually just grow as much as you can within your own association or industry group. Do a small little, even the social part, like I said, the diverse speakers, and then move on to something else like more sustainable, like food options, things like that. So I think that's the important part to know of this, is just you can start small.
And Marc, you did mention that you have the sustainability criteria in your RFP. What exactly that is? What type of things you're asking?
Basically, we're asking for a commitment to help us with our ISO certifications. Our latest Congress was certified. The one before that was certified as well, ISO 121. We're asking if there's a policy, if there are some tools in place. We're asking for a commitment to help us with suppliers. We're asking if there are reporting mechanisms, the kind of things where the data is actually crunched and provided. So even though we're part of the 20%, we're still looking for destinations to help us. It's part of the criteria, but it's also a partnership in which, without the destinations, we really can't do much. What we're looking for is destinations or venues themselves who are on the journey, who are looking to be sustainable, even if, because local contexts are varied, even if the performance is not always the same, at least we're looking for a certain vision of sustainability and a trajectory. And then we work with the destination to try and move the cursor.
Let's continue on the conversation about mastering and accountability. Currently, only a small amount of number, I would say, actually actively using carbon calculator. And at the same time, we got 20 who do not calculate them at all. I would like to maybe starting with Virginie, and then we can go Marc and Erika. Because even with Destination Canada, with your own events, right? Do you currently measure the carbon footprint for your events? If so, what is the journey has been?
We do. We organize some events that are in Canada. And then we have other events that we organize outside of Canada where we will take what we call the Team Canada concept and exhibit at somebody else's event. We'll go to an IMEX event or an IBTM event and bring the entire Canada contingent with us. So those two are measured separately. So for our events hosted in Canada, where we have kind of control of where they are located and who we host them with, we strive for those events to be completely carbon neutral. So we've been measuring them for a number of years. We are consistently trying to reduce our carbon footprint with the help of our partners. And at the very end, what we cannot reduce, of course, we offset the remainder. The biggest component, as you can imagine, is travel. And for a lot of those events hosted in Canada, we'll actually ask that our Canadian partners come and offset their own portion of their trip. So that gives them a little bit of skin in the game. And some in the beginning, it was, oh, how do I do that? Right? It was really starting from scratch, and now it's becoming way more natural. But we do track and measure all of it when it's in Canada and offset. When it's outside of Canada, we work with the actual organizer because we're just an exhibitor on that show floor usually. So we will measure our own footprint, what we use from our vendors, our booth builder, for example, or event manager, so all of our supply chain. But we also have a post-event survey, a sustainability survey for all of our partners that are exhibiting with us. So if you're a Canadian and you're coming with Team Canada, you will get that survey that will ask you, where are you flying from, what air category, if you were in standard or business class. How did you get from home to the airport? How did you move around in the destination? What kind of hotel? How many nights? So we'll ask all of that and we track. So we do have a whole measurement into it. We don't offset, but it helps us see what is our footprint at each of those events annually. So we're at the beginning of this and we're trying to get better every time and bringing everybody else along with us when we do.
And Marc, how about, because I know you guys are definitely a little bit more at events as well.
First of all, maybe the background is that by almost definition, our constituency is relatively sensitive to issues around nature conservation and climate, right? So we're playing on a relatively favorable landscape. What we did is, of course, measure, but we went one step further. So the history of this is we had a Congress in 2021. Our Congress is every 4 years. 2021 in Marseille, and we offset all of the carbon linked to the venue. But we didn't do it for travel. What we did for travel is tell people that they could buy credits in various projects, which we selected with the help of the host country. And about 30% of the participants actually did that, which is good. But at the same time, it's not outstanding for a constituency, which, as I said, should be relatively inclined to offset carbon. And Virginie's totally right. Venues, even with AC, are a drop in the bucket compared to the flight. The travel is the elephant in the proverbial room here. So as long as you're not tackling flights, you're not moving the needle a lot on carbon offsetting. So what we did and what we decided for Abu Dhabi, which was our Congress last October, was to make it mandatory for everybody. So mandatory offsetting, when you register for our event, you pay the fee that is, depending on your category, member, non-member, youth, etc. You enter where you're flying from, and this was the difficult part. We had a real-time calculator calculate the carbon footprint and translate that into dollars, and therefore your registration included the mandatory carbon offsetting, which then we paid to. You choose when you're registering who you're going to pay it to, but we paid the actual amount of carbon to the projects that were selected. So we had a 100% mandatory offsetting, meaning that we also calculated, and we used Trace in the past. This time around for Abu Dhabi, we used another one, but there are very good calculators out there. IATA has its own calculator, which is very good, but it only does airlines, obviously. We wanted a calculator that does everything, including land travel.
And I know, Erika, I don't think you guys are currently measuring anything, correct?
That's correct. Aside from the occasional venue that provides what we've done with that event, but no, we're not calculating that right now. We also don't have a strong request from our group like Marc does in regards to their need for it. I love the idea of being able to charge as a registration, but I know our people, 45% of our attendees are students. And so that makes it really difficult to charge a fee on top of that where they're already struggling to pay some of those fees. But it is something that I would love to see much more of, doing the calculations and trying other ways that we're trying to consider public transportation as an option to transfer from one place to another, or to even, instead of flying, maybe the train, like those, we're having our meeting in Montreal. Maybe people from the East Coast can just take a nice scenic route through a train ride to help offset maybe some of that carbon footprint. But we're not quite where Marc's at with the calculations and the fees and the offsetting. It would be a nice place to be. I don't know if we're going to be there anytime soon, but I think it's a nice goal.
But just quickly back to Marc, did you see more of your audience right now, specifically in Europe, that choose short-haul fly or train?
Unfortunately, we don't have experience in data to really show that there's a transfer. But what I can say is that our constituency is relatively favorable to this. When they were asked if sustainability measures were important, 94% said extremely important. So we're in a good disposition, but nobody objected to the fact that we were charging mandatory carbon offsetting.
I'm just curious, for your meeting, you said you had 11,000 people attend. Do you also provide a virtual option?
Yes, it's a statutory requirement now, but actually what we noticed is very few people availed themselves of that option. Okay. We had about 1,000 people online. Not at one time. Overall, about 1,000 people online and about almost 10,000 on site. But when you ask people, will you be going next year to the Congress? They all raise their hands.
And Virginie, I'm curious if you see that in some of your Canadian members who can potentially enhance the underground transportation. Have you seen some improvements or investment in electric bus or better train systems or preferable walk distance in terms of venue, something like that?
Let's face it, Canada has one single land border. Every other country has to basically fly to get to Canada. But within the cities themselves, that's getting better and better. And so we do encourage, from a flights perspective, we encourage the least number of layovers possible, the most direct routes, but that's a drop in the bucket. But locally, many of our partner destinations will offer public transit offerings for conference delegates. And one thing I'm seeing more and more is when you're choosing venues and offsite venues, is choosing them within walking distance. And when it's under 20-minute walk, for example, weather permitting, then a lot of times cities are doing away with transportation. And there's always transportation offered from an accessibility standpoint. But for those that can, it's encouraged to walk. So not only is it a cost-saving measure, because you're spending less money on shuttles and transport, it's a healthier option. And people are enjoying being outside, actually. But it just forces you to just really look at your venue. Like during your planning process, it has to be intentional. It's not just look at the next shiny location where you're going to be, I want to do my offsite there. That one's an hour away, and you're going to have to organize shuttles and everything else. Let's choose this one that's 15 minutes away. That's more convenient. You can walk to it, gets a lot of freedom to the delegate. So these are the tiny things that we're starting to see. Destinations being intentional about where they're offering venues for planners.
Yeah, to move on to the next, we would like to share another type of data comparison from this report about cost and value. Obviously, not surprised, everyone say cost is the number one issue, prevent them to plan on a different sustainable decision. But at the same time, we do have encouraging numbers to say that they're willing to pay a little bit more if it's more sustainable. So I guess the question here is, maybe we can starting with Erika from your organization perspective, is what does that little bit more mean?
Some of the things I've been doing is trying to find ways to reduce my costs. One thing I recently have done in the last few years is not have aisle carpeting in the exhibit hall. It's a huge sustainability issue, but it's a huge cost savings, as many people know, having carpet. Now, of course, we still have our exhibitors have carpeting in their particular areas, but saving a lot with not having that carpeting in the aisles was a cost savings, but also a good way to have sustainability. So that's one of those ways I think I've been trying to do, is to find the way to help reduce my costs by still trying to be sustainable in little ways each time. Other ways, of course, and most people know, is getting rid of printed copies of items. I know that seems like so old and everyone's been doing that, but I still get a lot of people who ask, where's the printed book? Even young folks sometimes are asking for the printed book. But it's one of those things that I know it's a cost savings on my end, but it's also one that helps the environment. So for me, I look at it a little bit differently, as opposed to what money could I apply towards sustainability, but what ways I can help my bottom line. Because as many planners know, is like the budget and the bottom line is the thing that we always have to look at, and to find creative ways to do that while still trying to be sustainable. That is where I'm at.
Marc, have you anything from your associations that you've been doing you can share?
I think the slide shows a relatively accurate distribution of the challenges. Even with everything I said about our constituency being favorable, there's a cost attached to many of the measures, not all, but many of the measures. Just to give you a sort of indicator of where we were, we invested about $400K in dollars in sustainability. So for a large event, multi-million and about 10,000 people, it's not outrageous, but it's still significant. And so cost was always a concern. Totally agree with Erika. We've had the debate about carpets many a time. There's a value to them, but they're really difficult to recycle. They pose a lot of problems. We are not yet paperless. We're paper low, but that's a cost saving. Not only the printing, but the shipping of those brochures, etc. So there's a cultural element here, making people aware of the fact that paper also has not only a carbon content, but a direct cost implication. We've done things on materials for the exhibition. We had a pretty large exhibition space of about 15,000 square meters. So thinking about the materials you use, how they're going to be recycled, are they locally sourceable? Not necessarily, but are they locally sourced? Those things can be just taking the time to think that through. And the destination obviously has a major impact here, because they know the people, they know where things come from, they know the footprint. And so for us, that's very helpful. But I think cost is definitely going to be part of the considerations for a while, even though, in our view, investing that cost is worthwhile. It's worth the investment, but it's not cost neutral for sure.
And I think packages shared that in the chat as well, is they no longer ship items to be on site, and they use local supplier as much as they can. And especially I think for print items. So when we're talking about speaker gift, when we're talking about attendee swag, for example, obviously the traditional model is you have so many suppliers out there who will give you a book of catalog that can give you anything, right? They can give you the pens, the water bottles, everything. But they are all and they are in dramatically low cost, right? They are all because they're all manufacturing in Asia or some other part of the world. On the other hand, you are going to have a local source artist who can provide a unique type of sweater or unique type of paintings, and they are going to be more expensive, but they are on locations, which means there's no shipping or custom barriers potentially going to experience, and they might carry a little bit more unique story. Which one would you choose?
We do not do speaker gifts, but if I were to provide gifts to speakers, I would do locally sourced items, maybe like a female-owned establishment that creates like small paintings or bracelets or something like that that would cater to the speakers that we have. But yeah, we do specific awards for certain events, but that one we do create here only because it's such a custom type of an award, and we hand carry that over to the meeting we're at, so we don't ship. I would love to have that more locally sourced because it'd be easier on our bags if we didn't have to hand carry them. But yeah.
So we have in the past given speaker gifts at our big Congress in Abu Dhabi last October. We also actually had a plan not to give out water bottles, but to sell them at cost. And my management and the host country didn't go for that. They said, no, we need water bottles. So we did the water bottle. A lot of us go to events. There are water bottles everywhere. So we now have our collection of water bottles. In a way, if we really want it to be sustainable, I understand the branding aspect is key, but it's not necessarily the most virtuous thing now to give out 10,000 water bottles. I think that for us, the way forward would be to dematerialize the gifts. So one of the things we thought about is on behalf of the speakers, we give money to a local organization or charity, or it's not a gift, but it's a gift on behalf of the speaker. And in a way, it can be, for them, it can be an interesting thing to, we didn't do that in Abu Dhabi, but it's one of the things that we're thinking of. Speaker gifts are really nice, but they do have a transportation issue for the giftee. There's a carbon issue, there's transportation, there's waste potentially if it stays on site. So it's not necessarily a great idea to give significant gifts, even though speakers may come to expect them.
Can I jump in, Sean? I'm itching on this one because
Yes.
I love for the record, I do hate the swag with a passion. And I'm the one that will give the stink eye at a hotel when they give me, hey, here's a free plastic water bottle. I'm like, excuse me? So yeah, I'm one of those, but that's personal. But I wanted to jump in on the cost one. And I love what Erika said, because a lot of the cost decisions that one can make are actually in favor of sustainability. So when you're trying to save money, you can actually save the planet at the same time. We know a lot of exhibitors like us that will replace their booths every year, for example. And we have taken a different approach, right? We will keep our booth for usually about 3 years. We look at the end of life cycle of those booths and see we can put a little bit more money up front, but when you spread it out over 3 years, it would actually save us money. We're looking at every little tidbit, like we supply partner uniforms when we're on our shows. And now we're going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to wear it for 2 days. And we make it something that you can actually wear for a more number of days than just a 1-day type uniform. So every little aspect of where we spend the money, we look at it through that lens. Where can we save? I mentioned the shuttle idea. And our sustainability storybook is full of these little tidbits of ideas where it encourages to think, where can I save money? And at the same time, it will be a better conscious environmental decision.
All right, so let's move on to the next one, is about the participant demands for sustainability, which is another really interesting part. And I would like to acknowledge that the data might not reflect the true story just because of the way that we asked the question. But we did ask, have you seen an increase in participants request more sustainability option or initiative events? And what we see is not dramatically changing, but just slightly declining. And I think that just prompted the question, is sustainability still on top of people's minds? And specifically, we saw the media is talking about the priority shift in many different countries. So maybe we can, starting with Marc, is talking about, obviously your member are very uniquely passionate about this topic, but has your member or attending being a bit more proactive, like asking for sustainability option or initiatives, or has your member pushed you to do more?
So I can't give a trend because we started measuring and asking in the survey much more systematically in October of last year compared to 2021, for example. I couldn't show the trend, but we're naturally in an environment where people are receptive to the notion. I think I quoted the figure earlier, 94% of the respondents to our survey, about 730 people responded, 94% said it was important or extremely important. And for us, it's a good sign. But we also asked them what they found useful, what they remembered, right? It's interesting I don't have that data right in front of me, but basically, did you remember the waste sorting? Or did you remember the air to water towers or the carbon offsetting, et cetera? And we have these metrics of the different things that people actually integrated or thought were useful. And for me, one of the more interesting answers was to the question, would IUCN's initiatives make you more likely to come to a Congress in the future if we were to continue this? And people responded very positively to that too. So it is important to them. And that helps in convincing, for example, the people paying that it's worth doing. Even my management, showing them the data indicates that there's really a sort of implicit or explicit demand around sustainability. And you need those points of data to be able to convince people.
And how about you, Erika? I understand your organizations obviously are not have sustainability as a mandate, but I guess the question will be is with all the small change that you implement, how's the receiving end from your attendee? Are they happy about it? Are they not notice? Are they complaints? What are the or the mix of both?
So we don't ask in a survey, we don't ask for what their thoughts on sustainability. And from what I gather as to what they find important is low cost and more food. In regards to sustainability, I don't think it's something that's on top of their mind. Once again, we haven't surveyed them, and that would be good to find out to see where they lie on what they think of sustainability. I do have one speaker out of so many that we have who actually has put her foot down and doesn't want to fly anymore because she wants to reduce her carbon footprint. But that, like I said, that's one. Our scientists tend to travel a lot around all over the world. They are constantly everywhere. So for them not to travel, I think it would be tough for them. And so I just don't think it's really on top of their mind. But it would be interesting to survey them to see what their thoughts are on it.
And Virginie, would you like to weigh in from a destination perspective, especially from a receiver end from many RFP, right? Have you seen a different factor or a different signal from associations you be engaged with?
I think if you look just at the data, like earlier on, we said that only 20% of associations actually have sustainability embedded into their RFP. So if you look at only that, it's an interesting signal. But it doesn't mean that they don't want it if it's just not in their RFP. On this question, I think we have a flaw in our data. The way that the question was asked, because the question is actually not asked. So when I hear Erika's not asking, right? You're not asking your membership, what did they think of sustainability during your event? Or is it important? Should we include it? What should we do? None of that is asked. So when she's asked, do you get demand from your attendees? Well, the response is going to be no. There could be people that are vocal about it or would want to share, but they're just not being asked. So you don't have that answer. So I do think the data is flawed in what we're receiving. But more interestingly is who's doing the push, right? Who's asking for those sustainability? And what we're really seeing from a destination perspective, it comes from two spaces. One, it comes way more from the corporate world. So corporates, large corporations, when they host their events, they have environmental sustainability governance targets, ESG targets that they need to push or metrics they need to report on. So they will be way more demanding from a destination on their sustainability angle. And then the other one that we see is the younger generation. They're way more conscious, they're way more active. I won't say activists, but just more conscious of it. And so those discussions are more prevalent and they will ask more. And then in between, you have associations that are still catching up. So that's what we're seeing on who's really pushing the needle.
Is that kind of what you've experienced with your audience? Is from younger generation and also corporate partner?
Our younger people right now, their main focus is networking. That's what we're finding. That's what they find very important right now. They are all about trying to make those connections because they understand the importance of it. So for the sustainability factor, they're not really looking at it in the sense of what are we saving. They're trying to figure out who best I could connect with at many times throughout the meeting. And so it's a little bit different. Now, granted, I still do get from my folks going, where are the water stations? Because they are bringing in their own water bottle. So I do see more of that, since why we don't order them anymore, because it's just a waste. But a lot of them bring in their own water bottles. So that's where I hear from folks.
I think it is true that there are differences in the perception because our focus really is sustainability. But still, it's true that not everybody is conscious and not everybody knows what you can put behind a sustainability measure. That was a very simple one, bringing your own water bottle. It reduces the fact that the bottles need to be produced and shipped and potentially wasted. So yeah, for us, there is a demand there, but we're probably an outlier compared to the majority of associations where it's not central to their operations. And that's where you have to be mindful or thoughtful about what measures low-hanging fruit. By the way, I want to give a shout out to GDS. It was really helpful to have their kind of input from other places where they have worked, but also organizations with whom they've worked with, because that's where you get your inspiration for little things that can make a difference.
I think it's a great way to wrapping up the conversation with a bit more open and, how to move this needle. Are you prepared for a different food choice because of recent XYZ? Are you asking some different type of question now? even you don't have those data?
We didn't ask the question before the event, but we worked a lot, again, with GDS and with the destination and with the caterers on options, locally sourced, locally produced, vegetarian, etc. There was a cultural issue there. At one point, we thought, let's just do a 100% vegetarian Congress. And we noticed that didn't go over that well with the host country, so we readapted. But basically, we gave a lot of vegetarian and sustainable options. And then we asked people what they thought of those. And it was a very high satisfaction level, but because we chose those menus very carefully. It's not the cucumber sandwich between two slices of bread that you see in some. We really curated good vegetarian options. I myself am not a vegetarian, and I had those vegetarian options, and they were great. So no, it can be done, but asking people, yes, making them aware that maybe they could do this because of reason XYZ is indeed a good way of surveying the audience, because I think individuals are ready to shift the needle at a low cost to them personally.
One of the key messages I keep hearing actually is sustainability can mean many different things, right? It doesn't mean you need to measure carbon right away. So it doesn't mean you need to eliminate paper right away, right? But do you feel that you or your organization are just a bit more naturally integrate some of the principle we're talking about here? Maybe not with a sustainability lens, but you're actually doing it.
I think that's it. We're naturally going into that. And in regards to food, same as Marc, we do ask the question, but we always try to make sure that we have that good balance as dietary restrictions and needs are just growing. We try to balance that as much as possible. Like we don't serve lunch, but we try to do that within our breaks and trying to provide healthier options. Though I always love the people who come by and said, where are the cookies? It's one of those things where we're trying to provide a little bit more of that farm to table, locally sourced type items. I think it's just funny when I hear people say, where's the meat? Where's the baked goods and all that type of stuff? But yeah, I agree with Marc. I think what caterers are doing these days is that they are looking at those affordable options for vegetarians or for people who have gluten intolerance, which makes it a little bit better to then be able to order. I think early on, it was really hard for all of our budgets as we were trying to sit there and accommodate for their needs, but the cost was so much. I think because it's growing now that it's become a bit more affordable, and it's nice to integrate that a little bit into the menu.
I think Stephanie from VCC put a really good comment in the chat, which is actually a really good point that I actually didn't think about, is vegan and vegetarian also impact carbon footprint, right? Especially when you need to feed large amount of number that sometimes you can't always source them locally.
I think it's funny though, to that point, I always find it funny when we do ask for what people want and I get a huge number of vegetarians who I'm like, okay, I've ordered for them, but yet I run out of the beef. And it's one of those things where we're also relying on our attendees to tell us that they are that, but then they change their mind and decide to grab the meat option. And you're just kind of like, wait, now I've got all these vegetarian meals off to the side. So I know I've eaten some of those because I'm like, I don't want it to go to waste.
Virginie, I'm just curious, you're welcome to continue on the food conversation, but I'm also curious, within all this conversation we have so far, what do you think destination should position or taking care of sustainability right now for association clients?
I think a lot of the work on the sustainability front is being led by destinations. Venues have done so much work, hotels have done so much work. So there's a big push that has been done by destinations. I love to see that associations are catching up and asking more and more about it. I think that's the biggest single help that associations can do to push destinations to continue that good work is to keep asking. So if that 80% that's not including it into the RFP could just even ask the question, it's, you know what, we don't know what we want, but if you have sustainability options, please just suggest them. That alone increases the demand for sustainability products, which helps us as destinations continue that good work. So that is my single ask to put out there is just ask.
Yeah, that's a great one. Do association ask what the menu is for the meeting before or after? and team up for a more cost-effective sourcing of food.
That's a really good point. Menu sharing is a really good idea and helps with cost as well. As if you are looking at what the other group is serving or even the one after, you can then combine in the order and have it a little bit much more cost effective, especially if you are able to communicate with everyone. And I try to do that. It's just so sometimes there's no groups that come in and are after, but it is definitely a good suggestion.
That is a really great way to wrap it up, because back to basically what Virginie said, just ask.